Welcome to Talk Across America. I'm Doug Miles, and we're here in beautiful Sarasota, Florida. Joining us now, great to welcome a woman who's written a really interesting book. If you were a fan of the show, even if you weren't, I think you'll get a kick out of it and talk about the show Friends. And the name of the book is I'll Be There For You, the one about Friends. We're joined today by Kelsey Miller. She's a journalist, and she is, I believe, based up in Brooklyn, New York. And Kelsey, good to talk with you. How are you today?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good. You're in Brooklyn, right? I was born there. I didn't live there. I grew up in Long Island, but Brooklyn seems to be the happening place right now, right?
Yeah, I love it. Where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn Hospital, but I grew up in Long Island. But that just happened to be the hospital. My parents grew up in Brooklyn, but they grew up there, and it was great then, and I've heard it's great again.
It's pretty great, yeah. For sure.
Well, a fascinating book. I was Friends watcher. I have to admit, I didn't watch it when it first came on because I saw some of the coming attractions. You talk about it in the book. When it first came on, you kind of looked at it and said, I don't know how good this is going to be, but it kind of was a show that built, right? It took a while to get popular, about 2 or 3 years, didn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first wave came actually in summer reruns after the first season. There was always a little bit of buzz around the show because, as you say, it was very well marketed and well promoted, and but really it didn't find its footing until, even about the second season, and I would even say the third season is when the sort of quality of the show that we have come to know really kicked in.
I remember seeing all the clips and stuff. I think Seinfeld was the hot show then, of course, and some of the others, and you see clips of that. And I looked at it and said, this doesn't look like it's going to be great. It's going to be a typical kind of sitcom, but you're right. It took them about a year or two to find their way, and then once they did, boy, it took off. It stayed on 10 years, so that's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's true. And when you think about it, it never really went away. I mean, this is a show that debuted 25 years ago almost, and it's something that has been sort of on in the background of our lives ever since. What
brought you interested in it, or were you just a fan of the show, or what brought you to write a book about it?
It's interesting, because before I wrote the book, I never thought of myself as, a diehard Super Friends fan. I thought I knew Friends and liked Friends the way everybody kind of did, because or at least everybody, in or around my generation, because I was 10 years old when the show debuted, and I was in college when it ended. So I don't think that you can be, somebody who lives through that era and not have a relationship to the show, even if by some chance you actually didn't watch it. And so I wanted to write something that was sort of combining kind of the cultural critique and the commentary that we have now about the show with a real sort of deep dive into the history of it at the same time.
You mentioned you were only a kid when you started watching it. I was a little bit older, and you look back at them now, it was a funny show, but it was, quite adult, the subject matter. Obviously, the jokes had to do with a lot of adult themes. I just wondered, of a little kid at your age at that time, did you get the jokes? And I wonder if a lot of kids watched it at that age. It seemed to be an older audience they were catering to, but I know a lot of kids watched it because they like the young people and all that kind of stuff.
They did. I mean, I talked to people who watched it when they really didn't know what was going on. I interviewed one of my own cousins for the book who lives in the United Kingdom, where Friends is really, really huge. And she was watching it when she was 5 years old or something like that. And of course, the jokes flew right over our heads when we were kids watching it and stuff like that. A lot of them did. But at the same time, there's still something really magnetic about it and really enjoyable about it. And, it's very strong writing, and the cast really clicks together. So there is something about this show that pulls you in. And I do think if you're a little kid watching it, there's something about the cool grown-ups and getting to imagine yourself getting to that time in life when you have your own apartment and you have your group of friends and things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to say, each character was well-defined. That was the brilliance of it. They all had their own quirks, and everybody had their favorite. I guess, everybody a lot of people like Jennifer Aniston because of the hairdo. A lot of people like, for the guy's side, maybe Joey because he was kind of a wild one. But everybody, there was something for everybody, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, something for everybody, and, despite their pretty major differences, as you point out, they really did all click, and even though objectively, when you're looking at these characters, it would make no sense for them to be friends. They wouldn't even have the same working schedules. Right. One of them worked in a restaurant, one of them was an actor, one of them was an academic. It wouldn't make any sense. But within the context and the premise of the show, it totally worked. They connected and they clicked really, really well.
I guess kind of like the show Cheers, they had to have that coffee shop where they all would get together, right? That was kind of the main meeting point until then the apartment after that. But I guess that was the premise,
and the
right?
apartment, yeah.
The apartment, yeah. So they had a place where it's New York City, so they all kind of met there. I guess that was the original premise, right?
Yeah. Which is kind of how it works, I guess, when you're in your early 20s, and like, you know, for the most part, you're going from maybe job to job, and so it wouldn't make sense really to have a workplace comedy at that age. But it makes sense. I mean, yeah, we all probably have that friend, even now in our friends groups, who is usually the hostess or something like that. Like, whoever has the most living space usually ends up hosting all the friends, right?
Let's talk about the actors and the actresses in the show. Obviously, everybody, you know, they became household names. I guess that might have been one of the last shows that was primarily, since, you know, even though it was cable then, network audiences were still pretty huge. So they became household names, all these actors, right? Pretty quickly.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they really did. Yeah, they were on the cover of every single magazine all of a sudden, and they were getting all these crazy endorsement deals. They really blew up, especially around the second season. And then they did, I don't know if you remember, they did this massive commercial, like this massive campaign with Diet Coke.
I'd forgotten about that until I read the book.
Everywhere.
Yeah, until you mentioned it, I'd forgotten about that. But yeah, they did that. You're right.
It was crazy, I know. So they really became very household names. And I think even at that point they acknowledged they got actually probably too famous and too overexposed too quickly. And so they kind of pulled back at that point. And I think from then on out, they managed their star images a little bit better.
They all seem to get along, too. I know, you know, the tabloids always try and make on these hit shows people not liking each other and create controversy, but I don't think there was a lot there that was real, if there was any, that they disliked each other in any way. And they all seem to get along. Is that true?
Oh no, that is definitely true. I mean, as I wrote about in the book, you know, they acknowledged, sure. I mean, it wasn't like nobody ever had a fight or nobody ever had a conflict, but whatever they, you know, got into one of those, they always solved it on the stage. They really managed to keep it amongst themselves and keep it very, very professional. And I think they really recognized from the beginning that they kind of had to, you know, have strong bonds off screen. They had to do that if they were going to succeed, because it was a true ensemble. And if one person, you know, felt like they were being left out, or if one person got turned against somebody else and there was a conflict, then the show would have totally fallen apart, and it would have been virtually impossible for it to succeed the way that it did. So I think that's another reason why they nurtured those relationships so much. I think it was Matt LeBlanc who said very early on that it was like starting a bunch of marriages, you know? and you recognize you have to put work into that. Sure.
And you talk about, too, David Schwimmer and Lisa Kudrow. I guess they were the oldest on both, you know, the men and the women, so they kind of handled, as far as negotiations went, they kind of took the lead on that, didn't they? You know, they all wanted to, I guess, most favored status, whatever they call it, most favored nation status. With one gets, everybody gets.
Oh, well, it was actually, that was, in the beginning, Courtney Cox was the most famous, and she actually had what's called a favored nations clause in her contract, meaning nobody could make more money than she did. But then, when they were negotiating for the third season, and David Schwimmer was becoming the breakout star, and they were all being paid differently at that point, different amounts, he was the one who said, hey, I think we should use this opportunity to talk about being paid equally, because that way, you know, nobody could ever be turned against the other in terms of, you know, somebody getting paid more than the other. Nobody was going to feel slighted in that regard. And so from then on out, that's when they decided to do collective bargaining, and it worked. Every decision that they made, they actually came to a vote on. And yeah, people talked about the fact that Lisa Kudrow and David Schwimmer, they sort of got identified in the press as the ringleaders, but really, they did actually come down, you know, take like a vote amongst each other, and then all went to the bargaining table together after deciding.
Yeah. Anyway, we have just about a minute left. This is one of those shows like MASH, like Cheers, and, you know, some of the other ones that's going to go be in reruns probably forever, right? I mean, it's that type of show.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a premise that is timeless and universal. It's about the experience of friendship. So, you know, I don't see that going anywhere anytime soon.
The name of the book is I'll Be There For You, the one about friends. Really great stories in the book about all the actors that portrayed the friends and behind-the-scenes things. We didn't even get to those, but we'll let the audience do that. Kelsey, do you have a website you can direct people to, get more information on the book?
Yeah, absolutely. My website's kelseymiller.com. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ms. Kelsey Miller, where I'm sharing some behind-the-scenes stuff and taking questions about the book and about the show.
Great. Kelsey, pleasure talking to you. Hopefully we can do it again. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on Talk Across America. Please visit our website at dougmilesmedia.com for more great interviews and content. And if you're interested in any of the books we talk about on the program, please click the Amazon link on our website. It helps support the podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again real soon here from beautiful Sarasota, Florida.
I'm Stan Brock. 30 years ago, I formed Remote Area Medical to help people overseas. But then we found generations of families in America, isolated by poverty from the health care they need. Together, we can take dental, vision, and medical help to 1 million adults and their kids, right here at home in the United States of America.